376, Senator Donoghue and Feingold. Senators Donoghue and Feingold have an amendment which the clerk will read.
376 by Senator Donoghue and others. Shannon Grant.
The chair recognizes the senator from Middlesex, Ms. Donoghue.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like to thank the chairman of Ways and Means and his committee who have worked so hard on this budget. And as I've sat here for the past days and listened to very worthy requests, it just has driven home how difficult a process this is in these difficult times. And I want to commend the chairman for doing an outstanding job. Notwithstanding that, I would ask my colleagues' attention to this amendment that I rise in support of. About 4 days before I was sworn in here in this body, in the early morning hours of New Year's Eve 2010, there was a party in the city of Lowell where teenagers were in attendance. Unfortunately, as we've seen too often today, youth decide to settle disputes not by words or even in years past fists, but with the use of guns. And a New Year's Eve party for teenagers turned into, unfortunately, a young woman of just 18 years old losing her life by just sitting in a room, hopefully ringing in the new year, and unfortunately it didn't work out that way for her. A statistic? Perhaps. But these individuals that we see day in and day out throughout the Commonwealth who are victims of youth violence, it continues to be one of the most vexing problems for our cities and for our towns. This Shannon Grant is named in honor of Charlie Shannon. I didn't have the privilege of knowing him, but I've learned and heard a lot about him. He dedicated his life to fight crime, and particularly youth violence, and that's why this is so aptly named in his memory. Since 2006, the Shannon Grants have been in existence in this Commonwealth and have proved to be a remarkable resource for communities like mine, like the city of Lowell, particularly in these days where communities have sustained such tremendous budget cuts. We know how they've struggled in the Great Recession. And unfortunately, police departments do not have the extra tools it takes to address the things that are most difficult of rising crime, and particularly when it comes to the youth in our cities. But the Shannon Grants have filled that gap and have made such a difference. Let me just talk to you briefly about some of the regional efforts that the Shannon Grant has addressed, and in particular in my community, suppressing and deterring gang activity. The Lowell Police Department has been able to utilize Shannon Grants since 2006 and to address that much-needed area. And in particular, let me tell you, in 2009, there were 456 individuals under the age of 18 arrested in the city of Lowell. 48% were between the ages of 13 and 16. Lowell and many other communities who receive the Shannon Grant are able to address the suppression and deterrence of gang activity. How do they do that? In a number of ways. Lowell has been able to provide extra gang units on patrol in summer months when we know and we have seen the spike and rise in gang activity. Lowell has been able to be supportive of the street worker program, working in conjunction with the United Teen Equality Center in Lowell, sending street workers out into the community to reach those youngsters and those gang members and provide for them the much-needed guidance that unfortunately they're lacking in their homes. The city also works with the Neighborhood Impact Team, again, to deal with some of these drug houses and places that unfortunately we see youth congregating at and getting into the life of crime. The city partners with the Lowell Public Schools. In addition, the city engages in education and has been a tremendous link in terms of reducing high truancy rates, working together with the initiatives of the Lowell Public Schools and the Lowell Charter Schools, because again, we see when the truancy rate is up, when the dropout rate, as Senator Chang Diaz indicated, is up, that's when we see not only gang activity, but unfortunately a life oftentimes of crime that's going to cost the society more in the long run. The Lowell Parks and Recreation Department has held basketball programs, physical education programs through the Lowell Police Department, working with the youth and with potential gang members, dissuading them and providing a positive role in model for them. The proof is in the pudding. This program works. It is a success. The data from the Crime Analysis and Intelligence Unit from the weekly meetings, the bi-weekly meetings that the Lowell Police Department shares have shown remarkably that there has been a decrease, a 14% decrease in youth crime in the city of Lowell. That is a tremendous success for each and every individual that is helped, first and foremost. And then secondly, and also importantly, to the community at large, to their families, and to all of us who are able to look for an increase in participation with these youth. The Light of Cambodia Children has been successful in getting more parents involved. And that's another area that is a big problem when we deal with youth and violence and gang activity. The parents, unfortunately, are frozen out and sometimes in fear of getting involved, and they need to have a voice, and particularly in certain cultural communities. And we have found working hand in hand, educating them, has been a tremendous success, and it empowers the parents to take a role and to be more of a guide for their children and not simply a victim of the whole circumstance they find themselves in. Let me tell you about one individual who was getting into trouble and into fights. He ended up joining a boxing program put on by the Lowell Police at the West End Gym. Now, any of you who saw The Fighter, you saw the West End Gym and where Mickey Ward trained in his youth. This individual not only, and his family was homeless. There were a lot of issues that he was facing in addition to gang activity. But working with the Lowell Police, fighting in a program at the West End Gym, his attitude turned around completely. Not only has his family now found housing, but he is not getting into trouble at school. He is attending school, and he has benefited by this Shannon grant that it would not be possible without this program. Now, I know that this is a very difficult ask in this time. $4.5 million, unfortunately, for what we're asking people to do across the Commonwealth, I'd submit is just not sufficient. And I know it's adding to the bottom line, Mr. Chairman, but I would most respectfully ask for the consideration of the members in this request. In the long run, it makes a difference. And when you look at those 13 to 16-year-olds, they don't have another chance, and they can't wait until economic times get better. We have passed the window. And so when they're 18 or 19 or 21, when maybe times are better, unfortunately, they're probably incarcerated, and we've missed that window of opportunity with them. And so I would respectfully request that you look favorably on this amendment. And I also, Mr. President, would ask for a call of the yeas and nays.
That was the senator from Middlesex's maiden speech.